almost 3 years in a row, every morning after training at the gym on the outskirts of Miami, Dwayne Johnson went to the same small restaurant on the corner. Nothing special, a few tables, the smell of fresh rolls and coffee, waiters in frayed aprons. But it was there, in the midst of simplicity, that he felt peace. And always, without exception, the same waitress served him. Her name was Lena. A young woman, about 20, with tired eyes and a smile that never reached her lips, but was still there. She never asked questions, did not take selfies, did not ask about Hollywood, she only politely brought him his omelette, coffee with almond milk and a bottle of water. Her voice was soft, with a Spanish accent, and her clothes were always the same, an old beige t-shirt, a slightly elongated sweater, sneakers with worn soles. But Lena held herself up. And every time he tipped her, she just nodded, not even counting. That evening, when he arrived a little later, the hall was half empty. He was sitting in his usual corner, waiting for Lena, when he heard laughter seeping from the kitchen. Rude, mocking. "She's wearing the same shoes again," seriously, said the woman. "Maybe she should save up for some proper clothes, and not carry orders like a poor relative. But have you seen how she reacts when she doesn't even get a tip? Like a beaten dog, and she'll say thank you. It's sad to watch." Dwayne froze, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. He recognized the voices: 3 cooks and another waitress, the older one, who, as he now realized, simply mocked Lena every day. A few more lines about her hair, her old backpack, how she thinks someone's going to leave her more than $5. He stood up. Slowly, but there was a storm brewing in his stance. The conversation stopped abruptly when he entered the kitchen. One of the cooks backed away, the other waitress stared at the floor. Lena stood by the rack of plates, her hands shaking. She didn't even look up. Dwayne said, "What's this, normal for you? Talking about a girl behind her back who works twice as hard as all of you put together every day?" The cook, who had just been sneering, tried to smile. "We were just kidding, man. She's not offended. Right, Lena?" But Lena remained silent. Her lips pursed, her eyes gleamed, but she said nothing. Johnson raised his voice, not a scream, but steely, "This is no joke. This is humiliation. And it ends now." There was silence. The kind of silence that comes when something is broken for good. "I come here because it's humane. Because this girl is the only reason this place is worth visiting. And you've made her day a mockery. Just because you can. So what? You think you're better because of your new uniform and what? Hold your knife the right way." No one answered. One of the cooks looked away, another waitress mumbled something apologetically. But it was too late. Dwayne took a step forward, looked at Lena. She was still standing there as if she were stone, her eyes large, filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. He leaned over and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You are strong. And you are not alone. Remember that." Then he looked at the people who had been laughing just a few minutes ago. "You will never forget this day." The kitchen was silent. Only the faint hiss of the stove and the dull hum of the old refrigerator pierced the air. Dwayne did not call for the manager. Not at that moment. He stood straight, solid, as if rooted to the ground, his gaze as if he had been carved from stone. "How often do you do this?" he asked, calmer now, but his voice remained the same, impassive indignation. "Every day. In the morning. In the evening. Behind her back, while she delivers the order and smiles. No one answered. I asked, he raised his voice, and the echoes hit the walls, how often? The older waitress, the one who mocked the most, tried to portray levity. Well, maybe sometimes a little, but we were just laughing, it was just between us, between us. Dwayne nodded slowly. Then he took a step forward, and it was as quiet as before a storm. And she's not one of yours? Because she doesn't wear designer sneakers? Because her bag is worn out? Are you serious? The cook, a thin man with a tattoo on his neck, tried to laugh, but it came out fake, empty. You have no idea what people go through. You don't know how long she works. You don't know if she has parents, if she sleeps in an apartment or in a car. But you think you have the right to talk about her like that? He no longer raised his voice, but every word rang with threat. Because who are you? Someone who can fry bacon and lose the remnants of a conscience. Mister, calm down, we didn't mean to, but you did. It didn't mean to. You did. She kept quiet not because she didn't hear, but because she was used to it. And that's the worst part. She was used to it. Lena, who had still been standing there silently, trying to hold back her tears, finally whispered, Mr. Johnson, please, it's okay, but it's not okay. Dwayne turned to her, his eyes filled with tenderness and determination. Just because you've learned to endure pain doesn't mean it has to be inflicted again. The manager heard the commotion and ran out of the room. A man in a black shirt, with a badge and a nervous expression on his face, looked back, saw Dwayne, and froze. Mr. Johnson, did something happen? He asked, already feeling that this evening would end with an unusual closing of the cash register. What happened? Dwayne turned to him, his face devoid of the smiles from the movie screens. Your employees, the ones who wear your restaurant logo, are harassing the girl who is probably the only thing keeping the service here afloat. That's what happened. The manager was silent. He looked around at the staff, saw guilty eyes, bowed heads, and a frightened Lena. And something inside him seemed to wake up. I didn't know. This is unacceptable. I apologize, it's not me you apologize to, Dwayne interrupted. It's her. And not with words. But with actions. The manager approached Lena, embarrassed, confused. Lena. I'm sorry. We'll get the whole staff together, I'll arrange a conversation, everything will change. But that won't happen until you decide who you keep in the kitchen and what values are important here, Dwayne added. Because in establishments that respect themselves, they respect everyone, not just the customers in the $10,000 watches. The manager nodded. His hands were shaking. You're right. Absolutely. And then Dwayne took the final step. He moved closer to Lena and, much quieter now, but for everyone to hear, he said, I know what it's like to be looked at and only seen what they want to see. I know what it's like to walk alone, unprotected. But there's a difference between someone who's silent out of fear and someone who's silent with dignity. And I see the latter in you. Don't let them make you doubt that. She couldn't hold it in. A tear rolled down her cheek, and she finally allowed herself to take a deep, full breath. With pain and relief, he put his hand on her shoulder. And said nothing more. That night, the restaurant kitchen was silent, more than any shout. And a few minutes later, Dwayne walked out into the dining room, ordered the bill and left behind something much more than an empty cup of coffee. The room fell silent. Not a still silence, the silence of a room before glass shatters. Lena stood with the envelope in her hands, clutching it to her chest, as if she were protecting not the paper but something far more vulnerable, herself. Dwayne stepped back, giving her space, saying no more. But that space was distorted again, this time not by the pressure of humiliation, but by a new venom. "That's just ridiculous." Carla's voice came, rough, laced with envy and bruised ego. It flew between the tables, making Lena flinch. Some of the employees turned, some looked away. But Carla was already moving forward, her hands shaking with anger, not fear. "You gave her an envelope. With money. And now who is she? Victim of the year. Queen of the shift. We all work here, Dwayne. And we all keep quiet sometimes. We all put up with it sometimes. But for some reason, some get 20 grand and some get nothing. Carlo." Another waitress said quietly, trying to stop her. But Carla just waved it away. "No. I'll tell you. Because it's unfair. She's always quiet, always with that offended face of hers. And now she's a hero. For what? For standing still and crying. But I work longer than she does. I work 2 shifts. I save the kitchen every week when those bastards are late. And where's my envelope?" Dwayne didn't react right away. His gaze was calm, but no longer soft. He looked not at Carla, but at Lena, who was standing to the side, and something in her posture changed. For the first time, she didn't look like someone who wanted to disappear. For the first time, she straightened up. And as Carla took a step closer, Lena spoke up herself. "I didn't ask for this." Her voice was quiet but clear. "I didn't want to be the center of attention. And I don't think I deserve it any more than the others. But you weren't there when they laughed at me in the pantry. You weren't there when they threw plates at me and said, 'Be careful, she'll break it again.' You didn't see me cry in the bathroom with the tap running so they wouldn't hear." Carla looked away, but didn't back down. "I cried too. Yes. But you laughed when they laughed at me." Everyone fell silent. Lena continued, her voice shaking a little now, "I don't want money. But I want at least one person in this establishment to admit, one day, that I'm not a shadow. I'm not furniture. I'm a person." Carla clenched her fists. There was something new in her eyes, almost panicky. She didn't know where she belonged anymore. And it scared her, and then she laughed. Sharp, dry. "Oh, God. I heard it all. The wise words, the tears, the silence. And what now? Are we all supposed to become saints? Am I supposed to apologize? Bow down to her? Where is my fault? Is it that I'm tough?" Dwayne finally spoke. Calmly, without a shadow of emotion. His words were a blade, cold and precise. "No, Carlo. Your fault is not that you're tough. It's that you chose the side of force when you had the chance to choose the side of the heart." Carla froze. She wanted to say something more, but she couldn't. "I didn't give her money as a reward. I gave it as a chance. And chance doesn't come to everyone in the form of justice. Sometimes it comes quietly, to those who are long overdue to hear, "You're not invisible." And before anyone could add anything, the manager came out of the back room. His face was dark, tired. He had seen everything, heard everything. And now this was not just a personal matter between waitresses. "Everyone, take your seats," he said. "It looks like we're having another conversation. But this time it's about envy. And about dignity." The manager stood in the middle of the room, silently surveying each employee. His gaze settled on Carla. She no longer radiated confidence. Her arms were crossed, her gaze averted. Lena still held the envelope in her palms, as if she didn't know where to put it. Dwayne stood aside, silent as a rock that had already said everything. "This isn't a story about tips anymore," the manager finally said, his voice coming out muffled, as if from the ceiling. "This is about a disease. About what we, as a team, as people, carry inside." He looked at Dwayne. Then at Lena. "I'm ashamed. Not because it happened in front of a customer. But because it happened at all. And that I didn't notice anything." Carla grimaced, but said nothing. "It's not that you didn't notice anything," said a quiet, still silent waitress named Marissa. "We all didn't notice. Or rather, we didn't want to notice." Everyone turned to her. She was the quiet girl from the evening shift, often called invisible. She was standing by the coffee machine, but now her voice was unexpectedly clear. "When Lena came to the locker room and was silent, we pretended to listen to music. When she left later than everyone else, we were already leaving. And when Carla said to her, 'Will you ever learn not to clog the tables?' we laughed. So as not to be the center. So as not to be next." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop, "because we are all here, tired. We are all in pain. But we chose not to see someone else. We chose comfortable silence." Carla couldn't stand it. "Enough of you all. Are you all heroes now? Have you all become noble? And what's next? Are we going to share bonuses among ourselves because someone cried?" She looked up at the manager. "Are you really going to let it all revolve around her now?" The manager didn't answer immediately. Then he walked over to the bar, placed both hands on the marble top, and took a deep breath. "I'm going to let it all revolve around respect," he said finally. "And if that means breaking the culture of fear you've cultivated for years, I will." Carla smiled cold, wryly. "Yeah. Okay. So maybe you'll give her a bonus too? And sit her next to Dwayne at the table?" And then unexpectedly Dwayne said, "Yes. I will." All eyes turned to him again. "Because I don't see any of you who has more dignity than she does. And none who can stand under the weight of humiliation and not crumble. This isn't about tears. This is about pillars that hold up when everything around you falls." Carla took a step toward him, facing him. "You don't know anything about us. You come here, eat your omelet, smile. But you don't see how we live. You don't see my credit, my mother in the hospital. You're a millionaire who gives handouts. And thinks that's enough to buy a conscience." Dwayne didn't blink. He didn't back down. His voice was quiet, but it seemed to be engraved. "You're wrong. This is not a handout. This is an answer. I can't change the whole world. But I can give at least one person a chance. And today it's her. Because she didn't ask. Because she just stood there. And you're screaming. Because you think dignity has to be torn out. And dignity isn't screaming. It's the silence in which you don't betray yourself. Carla clenched her jaw. Something inside her seemed to break. But instead of exploding, she abruptly took off her apron, threw it on the floor, and left. No one stopped her. The silence wasn't unsettling, it was cleansing, the manager sighed. Then he looked back at Lena. I can't justify myself. But I can start to change. Now. He approached her. For the first time, not as a manager, but as a person. You were never a background. We just didn't want to see it because it made us see our own weakness. If you ever want to leave, I'll understand. But if you stay, you won't be here alone anymore. Lena didn't answer. She just nodded. And Dwayne went to the door. Before he left, he stopped and looked around. I won't come back here as a customer. I'll come back here as a person. And if I see that it's gotten better here, then maybe it'll be a place worth eating an omelet. And with those words, he left. Lena kept the envelope. And she hadn't opened it yet, but she already knew, the most he had left her wasn't money, but the feeling. 3 days had passed, the restaurant was alive, but it was breathing differently. The kitchen was no longer noisy now, there was a strange neatness, like after a fire, when there was still smoke but no more flames. No one was joking loudly anymore. No one was talking about, did you see her shoes? And every, good morning, sounded like an apology. Carla didn't come back. She didn't call, she didn't pick up her apron. Her shifts were given to others. Someone sighed with relief. But most didn't. Because everyone felt that this was no longer just a change in staff. This was a hole. In everyone, Lena worked as before. But still differently. Her shoulders were no longer hunched. She didn't look at the floor. When a customer addressed her, she answered directly, in an even voice, without a shadow of apology in her eyes. And everyone saw, something in her had become heavier. But not darker. And stronger. She still hadn't opened the envelope. It was in her backpack, between the notebook with the orders and the keys to the apartment where the tap was leaking. She knew what was there. She felt the weight not of the bills but of the gesture. But something held her. Not fear. Not doubt. But respect. Opening it meant starting a new chapter. And she hadn't finished the previous one yet. Marissa, that quiet waitress with whom she had hardly spoken before, now came to Lena every day. And every day, strange as it was, she brought her tea. Without words. Without explanations. She simply put the cup on the table during the break and sat down next to her. Their conversations were simple, about the weather, about music playlists, about the new menu. But Lena knew it wasn't tea. It was a bridge. The others began to change too. One of the cooks, the one who used to throw spoons around her, one day simply left a note on the shelf. I didn't know you could hear everything. I'm sorry. If you ever want to, I'll teach you how to make a Cuban omelet. There was no signature. But she recognized the handwriting. And her heart went quiet. The manager no longer shouted. He came in earlier, made coffee for the staff, and often just stood in the kitchen silently. He watched. After his shift, he would ask, "How was it?" And that was enough, but the main thing was inside her point one evening, after closing, as Lena sat on the back porch of the restaurant, listening to the night air and the distant noise of Miami, Marissa came up to her. In her hands was the same tea, not green today, she said. Chamomile. For silence. Lena smiled. You know, Marissa said after a pause, I once had an envelope like that too. Lena raised her head in surprise. Not with money. But with a chance. From the woman who once saved my mother. And I was afraid to open it for so long. And then I realized, you don't have to wait until you're worthy. You just have to accept that you've already become different. Lena was silent. Then she took out her backpack. Slowly unzipped it. And pulled out the envelope that it was a little wrinkled, with a drop of sauce near the edge, because life doesn't choose clean covers. She held it in her hands, and the silence between them became filled. I don't know what I'll do with this, she said. Maybe I'll pay off the mortgage. Maybe I'll buy new shoes. Or maybe I'll save it to get out of here. Forever. Where? Marissa asked softly. I don't know yet. But now I believe I have a place. And they sat there, the two of them. Side by side. Without a plan. Without an answer. But with a feeling that the world had shifted a little. And would never be the same again, and the next morning the restaurant received a new order, a reservation for 4 people for Saturday night. The customer's name was short, without titles. D. Johnson. Saturday came silently, like a morning prayer. Miami woke up to its usual rhythm, heat, humidity, the echo of freeway horns. But on one corner, in a small restaurant with a creaking door and simple napkins, everyone knew that this day would be different. The staff had been getting ready since 8 in the morning. Not out of compulsion. Not out of fear. But out of something new: respect. For herself, for the place, for the moment. Lena arrived, as always, first. Now she was no longer just a waitress. She hadn't been promoted to a senior position, hadn't been given a new uniform. But when she walked in, everyone's eyes would stop. As if for a reference point. And there was something more to it than a title. She was different. Not because she had money. She didn't touch it, the envelope lay in her bag, closed. But every day she chose not to open it. Because she already knew it wasn't for salvation, but for movement. And she's not ready to leave yet at 5 p.m., a group of 4 people walked in. All in sportswear. One of them was tall, with a soft gait, wearing a simple t-shirt without brands. He didn't look at the room. His eyes were searching for only one thing, her. Dwayne Johnson smiled when he saw Lena. Is the table by the window still available? He asked. Always, she answered. Her voice didn't tremble. His companions, 3 men, apparently from the team or training, sat down, joking, thanking each other. But Dwayne was silent. He took his time. He watched her move between the tables. And he saw, her posture had changed. She wasn't afraid of space. She knew how to be in it. The order went through easily. Lena brought the same things she used to bring only to him every day: an omelette with vegetables, water without ice, coffee without sugar. But this time, for 4. She laid out the dishes neatly, quickly. And nothing fell, spilled, or shook. Not even her hands. After dinner, when everyone was already laughing relaxedly, Dwayne raised his hand and signaled, not to the waiter. To the manager approached, now without nerves, without a strained smile. "I would like to suggest something," Dwayne said. And his voice was not like that of a customer, but like that of someone who was already part of this story. The manager nodded, listening carefully. "This restaurant has potential. But it will never be what it can be until it remembers who it is for. And who is creating it. Not the kitchen. Not the brand. But the people who carry the trays and clear the tables." The manager agreed silently. "That's why I want to be a partial investor. Not the main one. Not for advertising. Without my name on the sign. But with one condition." "What?" the manager asked. "So that starting next month, Lena becomes the HR coordinator. No loss of hours, no reduction in salary. She doesn't have to be the manager. But she has to be a voice." The room fell silent. And not because it was a loud gesture. But because it was the right word, in the right place. Lena was standing at another table, but she heard. And this time, she didn't run away. She didn't lower her eyes. She came over herself. "I don't know if I can," she said simply. Dwayne replied, "And I didn't know if I could either. When I started. But someone once gave me a chance. And I took it, not because I was ready. But because I trusted them." She nodded. And a smile appeared on his face, the likes of which had never been seen here before. He took out a second envelope. Small. But no longer white. Blue. And handed it to her. She opened it right there without hiding, without being ashamed. There was a simple note. "This restaurant survived because you didn't give up. Now it's time to live. For yourself. For others. D." And under the note a key. "What is this?" she asked. "Your code to the locked room, where your name is now stored. Because you are no longer a shadow." He left, not waiting for thanks. And not leaving the light behind him. Because the light was already there in it, and this time, when the restaurant door closed behind him, no one looked back with relief. Everyone was simply silent. Because they felt, they had witnessed something real, not a viral video. Not a show. But stories about dignity. About chance. And that the most important thing to see is not the person on the screen, but the one who is silent behind the apron. Sometimes the loudest victories are without applause. Sometimes the greatest wealth is when you are believed in at a moment when you could not believe in yourself. Sometimes, one omelette after training can be the beginning of a new dawn, for someone. For everyone.